Unprecedented. Unprecedented. Donald J. Trump's favorite word, except for his name, of course. Unprecedented. He convinces us all the time that he's a sui generis. Yes, I know. Whenever I speak French, it makes you think of chocolate pudding. Yes. Where was I? Oh, yes, Donald J. Trump. He's grandiloquent. He is a sui generis. He has the tallest buildings. He has the biggest. Oh, since I just put that in, you're probably going to want a comic about that, aren't you? Yeah, well, anyway, yes, the biggest of everything, the biggest crowds, the bestest president in the history of all humanity, Donald J. Trump. And yet, why is it that when it comes to one particular topic, he's decidedly humdrum? Yes, humdrum, routine, run-of-the-mill, decidedly small bore. Donald J. Trump, he is all these things when it comes to climate change. Climate change, I know, and he's playing straight out of the W book. You know W, I remember him back 20 years ago when climate change was just really starting to heat up as a debate topic. I mean, we go back in time to the 1960s, right? Rachel Carson's book, Silent Spring, which is, inspired by that John Keats poem, La Belle Dame sans merci. Thinking chocolate? Yes, all about how there's no birdsong at the pond. Yes, so sad. And over time, the environmental movements began, and his heart started small, but began to beat faster and louder as each passing decade, until we get to W, and he just says, well, you know what? I'm a petro. My family's petro. All my donors are petro. So you know what? I just don't believe any of it. 4 decades have passed, and I just don't believe it. It's all fuzzy math, just deny. And that's what Donald J. Trump is doing, right? He is taking such a beating over his attempts to roll back Obama-era environmental regulations that he finally decided to take matters in hand, boldly face up to this crisis, mount in his midst, and mount a panel. And he chose a doctor who's also funded by petrodollars, a doctor whose specialty is not the climate, in fact, it's optics. And Donald J. Trump honestly does not get how bad that looks. Yes, in fact, there are only like 5 scientists left in this country who think that global warming is not caused by human beings. And guess which of those scientists are going on the panel? All 5. Yeah, straight out of the W playbook. Those of us on the left tend to think that Donald J. Trump is a criminal mastermind. I don't think so. You know why? Because I think our orange couch potato is just too lazy to work that hard. No, I think it's just obviously ignorant about some things, and climate change may very be one of them. So, certain basic concepts like, weather is different from climate, he just doesn't seem to get. And how do we know this? Because, during the Amy Klobuchar kickoff, remember her? Miss Not So Nice Minnesota, when she was announcing her intention to run for president in 2020, it was snowing in Minnesota in the winter. I'm shocked to learn that it snows in the winter in Minnesota. Apparently, Donald J. Trump didn't know that because our snarkster in chief tweeted out that, here she is talking about climate change, and yet she's talking about global warming, but she's standing in the midst of a snowstorm. Oh, that was witty, Donnie. Okay, so maybe he really doesn't get it. So we need to explain these basic concepts to him. In fact, the difference between him and W, as much as he is playing straight out of W's book, is that the generals and the admirals have begun to finally pay attention to climate change. In fact, they throw around this new phrase that gets the rest of us head scratched. In that sort of militaristic way. It sounds jargonese. And, the whole intent is, for the guy in uniform to say this. It makes ladies weak in the knees. And so they say something like climate security. I work in climate security. Bond. James Bond. Shaken. Not stirred. climate security. Yes, yes. More on that in a moment. So, yeah, so they started paying attention. Well, the generals, what were they paying attention to? Well, the cost of transporting water. So you take your average, soldier out in the field, and he takes 5 quarts of water a day if he's in the rear with the gear. But if he's a frontline soldier, he takes 8. Right? So 8 quarts of water a day. So that's like what? 4, quarts per gallon. That's 2 gallons. So if you got 1,000 guys out there, that's 2,000 gallons a day. Now, what if you're Al-Qaeda and you're doing the same math and you say, hey, we can use this. What do you even have to take that city? We'll just cut off their water supply. And they did it in Mosul. ISIS did it. And Al-Qaeda's been doing it, Al-Shabaab, down in Somalia, right? Doing it several times. So now there's no water for our soldiers out in the desert, which means we have to airlift it from someplace. Can you imagine the cost of airlifting all those? Think of that in terms of those 5-gallon jugs. We need 400 of them every day being airlifted in, dropped. That's what generals think about. Then, following the water theme, what about admirals? What do you think about seawater and the fact they just sort of grew up to the idea that sort of maybe the left is, in kind of maybe something, they have something to say about this, because what we're seeing is as the Vietnam War era generals and admirals retired, and their knee-jerk antipathy toward the left wing because of the Vietnam War, draft riots, was retired. The younger generation grew up and they had friends who were among the left wing, and they said, you know what? Seawater expands when it heats up, and we're drowning this planet in carbon dioxide, so hence seawater is going to rise. Guess what happens to Norfolk Naval Station when seawaters begin to rise? It gets flooded out. Norfolk Naval Station right there in Virginia, the home of the Atlantic Fleet, which means someday we're going to have to move the shipyard for the Atlantic Fleet inland, maybe to, I don't know, Louisville, Kentucky? Actually, Mitch would probably like that, Mitch McConnell, because he's from Kentucky. Anyway, yes. So they started paying attention, and that's the difference. So I think we need to explain to Donnie that climate change really needs to pay attention. So I made a cute little primer, and I'm going to take a page right out of the DOD playbook, because, when they do his presidential daily briefing, you remember with Obama, they used to send him like 8 pages of dense text that he would very carefully read, and they'd write questions in the margins and send him back, and they'd send him more materials. With Donnie, it was like, well, send me 1 page. No, that's too long. Send me a half a page. No, that's too long. Send me a paragraph. No, that's too long. Send me 3 sentences. And then they started sprinkling his name in it. Well, I did the same thing, just to hold his attention. So here's my climate change primer for the attention challenge. See? Right? So then we explain some fundamental truths to Donnie. So here we go. That, climate and weather are 2 different things, and also that climate change is a national threat, is a threat to national security. And, that's a really interesting phrase, because that phrase right there tends to get presidents, sitting up and noticing, because even if they're not that really worried about us, they tend to worry about their legacy. So when there is a threat to national security, presidents tend to do something about it. But that might be just a little too esoteric for Donnie. So let's bring it down home to something that we do know he cares about, because he tells us all the time. For example, his daughter's physical appearance, right? Or maybe Mar-a-Lago's dollar value. Right. So now that we have his attention, we can explore the basic truths of climate change. And so I use a simple formula, the 3 C's formula, which is, the numbers aren't quite right, but it's close enough. Polluting cars are bad, plus coal is bad, plus cows are bad because they fart so much, right? No, cows are bad. Well, because with all that carbon dioxide from cars and from coal, we can suck a lot of it right back out of the atmosphere if we have rainforests in Brazil. But alas, we're cutting down those rainforests in Brazil to make room for cattle herds so that Donnie can shove cheeseburgers in his mouth every day. See? That's how that works. So now that we have his attention, we have to sell it to him. We have to sell it to him because, simple ideas for him just do not work. You have to sell him ideas. So he loves creating crises, so let's give him a crisis. Let's call it, and we'll take it, we'll combine it with that whole Space Corps idea of his. And we'll call it the Climate Security Corps. And their uniforms will be, what color? Green, of course. Yes. In fact, we maybe even call Jim Mattis. Remember the old Secretary of Defense? Call him back out of retirement. And he can run the thing. And then we can have the Climate Security Corps collaborate with the FBI and create a most wanted list of criminals, only this time the criminals aren't like John Dillinger or Machine Gun Kelly. This time it will be weather phenomena like a tornado. And we could do posters with a surgically altered, thinner Donnie standing in front of it saying, "Tornado, go away." And he'll look like the hero of the hour. He'll love that. And it worked for tornadoes. We could do it with like hurricanes. I mean, he can claim that he made the hurricane go away. Who's going to argue with him? It's clearly gone. And then we could do earthquakes. We could do floods. The floods. He made the floodwaters recede. Donnie is the hero once again. Donald J. Trump, our savior, the only man who can fix the problems. Might just work. After all, we've been having this debate for 60 years. Don't you think it's time we put it to rest?